which everybody is going to agree that he was negligent to some degree. And if this doctor is smart, he'll agree that he was negligent to some degree, but that he wasn't reckless or grossly reckless so as this to be a homicide. That's where the war is going to be fought, and it's going to be the little things, and it's going to be his testimony, because I just don't know how you're going to get around his testimony in this kind of a case.
Do you think it gets that far? Will he testify, or if you were his defense counsel, would you advise him?
I mean, it's too early. You don't want anybody to testify if you can help it, but let's see what the state has.
If the charge on the table is murder, for instance, and not homicide.
Yeah.
If it's murder, then you can't advise him to plead, because you can't do worse than that with a jury. So
Lynn,
you wouldn't tell him to plead.
Told not to carry the water for the defense, but if he pleads, his license is lifted. He more likely than not, he will never practice medicine again. He's a relatively young man, and
it's conceding malpractice.
That's exactly right. And just like Michael Vick, he's
lining
looking for a future.
You think people are lining up to be his patient?
Interestingly, this doctor has jumped around from state to state. He has had licenses to practice
Houston, Nevada, California,
in several different states.
I can tell you this, with the evidence, as I've seen it, and it could be more, if I'm representing him and he's offered a probationary sentence, I'm going to tell him to take it in this particular case.
Is it a strategy to almost blame the victim and say, I was trying to help him and he needed this and he begged me?
That's not blaming the victim.
Who's going to dispute that?
That's explaining it. Blaming the victim is a little bit different. But I mean, it's going to use the victim who can't now speak. That's true.
This doctor had an obligation, no matter how impassioned the pleas were, if the doctor knew or could reasonably foresee that his own conduct would have caused harm, to say
it's also Monday morning quarterback. Did he think he was going to die? Did he think he was going to die?
No one intends to die when they shoot up. You intend to get straight, not to get sick. Okay?
We go back to death by delivery.
Exactly.
The drug dealers provided the drugs.
10 milligrams and then 5, and the doctor can show on this day he did 2. That's a defense. That's part of a defense.
Except, Chuck, if you look at the timeline,
where's the life-saving equipment?
He's getting narcotic medication intravenously, not by mouth, intravenously, virtually every other hour on the hour.
And then the 20 to 90 minutes before you call an ambulance? Come on, the facts don't support that.
The fact that it's not accepted by the general medical community doesn't make it a crime.
And he's on a bed, not flat on the floor when he's trying to resuscitate him. I mean, what was this guy thinking?
The facts go against that.
It depends what they could prove. All these things have been in the press, and this one's idea and that one idea. Is that really going to be what the jury sees? Is that going to be the proof that they have? We don't know that.
Chuck, you make a good point about the jury, and I think this is important to note. Look, I think the prosecutor's going to demand prison. This is a prison case. He's going to want prison, and I don't think he's going to give probation. But I'll tell you one thing. When the jurors are listening to this case, they're not going to be thinking thriller. They're going to be thinking killer. I'm telling you right now, they're going to be thinking killer, not thriller.
All right, we want to know if you agree with that. Do you think that the doctor in the Michael Jackson case is in fact a killer, or do you think he was just trying to make life easier for our superstar, who quite obviously had a very difficult life? You can email me at tcn_IYC@cable.comcast.com. You know, we've had this panel and others like it together many times over the years, too many times to count, talking about Michael Jackson. And before we go tonight, I wanted to find out what you think about the fact that now Michael Jackson seems to have been elevated to a different status. How often were you guys here on this panel talking about the child molestation charges against him, defending him, saying that he did not do it, and now it seems like people have almost forgotten those previous accusations.
He's dead, and traditionally what you do is say nice things about those people who've passed on. You don't go to the funeral and talk about the molestation. You talk about the good things because he's passed on. He can't hurt anybody anymore. So, you know, that's just the way human beings really are in a moral society.
And no one ever disputed the nature and extent of this man's talent. I think many people felt horribly bad that his life sort of fell off a cliff in terms of this incredible talent that brought so much joy and so much wonder to the listener, and it influenced so many others, and then is hanging his kid off the balcony and feeding Jesus juice to unsuspecting kids.
I'll tell you one thing, it's funny how you never heard 1 ounce of evidence in his own trial when he was accused of molestation about all this drug use.
Well, I'll tell you, Lynn, what's also interesting is a point that Chuck brought up earlier, and that's about the pain. that he was suffering. I mean, we're talking about back pain. We're talking about the fire on the head. We don't know what kind of pains he was suffering. And someone in that type of pain, you know, that kind of somehow explains some of this odd behavior when he's just in this ridiculous amount of pain.
You know, one very odd notation on the autopsy report when I was looking at it is that his body was covered in bed sores when they performed the autopsy. And you just wonder what was happening that on one day he could be up and rehearsing. We've
Maybe
all
he
seen
wasn't.
that video.
Maybe
We've
it
all
was an
seen
impersonator up there on
that
the stage.
video, and then the next day he's dead and
That's
his
a problem for the
body
defense.
infected.
That's a problem for the defense, because if he's not getting up and getting around, that's a problem for the defense.
Sure, but that really makes no sense, because if he is out rehearsing for the tour, which was imminent, to develop decubitus ulcer, bed sores makes no sense at all.
Again,
like
we're going
his
to need to
whole
look at
life,
we're going to
that-
need to look at scientific evidence on
That
this to
seems
see what's
to be
going
his
on.
whole life. We just never knew what happened
Sure.
and what made sense. Scott and Sadie, thank you so much for returning to the
Thank
show.
you, Lynn.
Thank you,
And
Lynn.
Chuck,
Appreciate
always
it.
a pleasure to have you guys here. If you want to tell us what you think about Michael Jackson's life and untimely death, you can email me at tcn_IYC@cable.comcast.com. Until the next time, my thanks to my crew and to you for watching. I'm Lynn Doyle for Comcast Network.